In a luxurious restaurant where the wealthy dined in elegance, he entered with quiet confidence. Wearing a hoodie and jeans, Snoop Dogg just wanted a peaceful meal, but his casual presence felt like a challenge to the room. A waiter, with an arrogant smile, made his disdain clear, judging him solely by his appearance. Little did he know, his arrogance was about to crumble under an unexpected truth. Where are you watching this story from? Let us know in the comments below. Le Chateau Luxe was the crown jewel of Los Angeles' luxury dining scene. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, reflecting off the polished marble floors. The soft hum of classical music mingled with the clinking of glasses and murmured conversations. This was a place where fortunes were discussed over filet mignon and wine bottles, costing more than some people's monthly rent. Among the waitstaff was Jake, a senior waiter who had worked at Le Chateau Luxe for nearly a decade. Jake knew the restaurant like the back of his hand. He prided himself on identifying real high-class clients from those who just wanted to pretend. Jake had developed a sharp eye for status, designer suits, expensive jewelry, the right car parked out front. To him, appearances were everything. That's why, when a tall man walked in wearing a casual tracksuit and sneakers, Jake's instincts flared. The man's relaxed demeanor, paired with his braided hair and oversized sunglasses, didn't match the clientele Jake believed deserved to dine there. The man strolled in with a calm confidence, scanning the room before approaching the host's stand. "Table for one," he said, his deep voice resonating over the hum of the dining room. The host hesitated, recognizing the man immediately. But before she could respond, Jake stepped in. "We're fully booked tonight," he said curtly, his tone dismissive. The man raised an eyebrow, an amused smirk playing on his lips. "It's all right, I'll wait," he replied. Jake folded his arms, a hint of irritation flashing across his face. "I'm afraid the wait list is long, sir. Maybe you'd prefer somewhere more casual?" he added, gesturing vaguely toward the exit. Other staff members exchanged uneasy glances, but Jake remained resolute. He wasn't about to let someone, dressed like this man, occupy a seat meant for real customers. The man chuckled softly. "I'll just grab a drink at the bar while I wait then," he said, unfazed. Jake relented, waving him off dismissively. As the man walked away, Jake muttered under his breath, "This isn't a sneaker shop, buddy." Unbeknownst to Jake, several diners had overheard the exchange, and the tension in the room subtly shifted. The bartender greeted the man with a wide smile, immediately pouring him a glass of wine. Jake frowned from across the room, wondering why everyone else seemed to treat this casual guy with so much respect. And then it happened. The restaurant manager appeared, his face lighting up as he spotted the man. With a sense of urgency, the manager approached him directly, extending his hand warmly. "Mr. Broaddus, welcome back. We're honored to have you with us tonight." Jake froze in place. Why is the manager acting like this guy's a VIP? Who exactly is he? Jake's confusion turned into a gnawing discomfort as he watched the restaurant manager practically roll out the red carpet for the man at the bar. "Mr. Broaddus?" The name sounded vaguely familiar, but Jake couldn't place it. He continued serving other tables, stealing glances as the manager and the guest laughed and chatted like old friends. The unease grew when the manager returned to the kitchen, calling a quick staff meeting. His voice was urgent but hushed, ensuring that no diners overheard. "Listen up, everyone," he began. "I need you to give your absolute best tonight. One of our VIPs just arrived, Mr. Calvin Broaddus. Treat him with the utmost respect. Understood?" Jake furrowed his brow, the name still not clicking. The other staff members, however, exchanged knowing looks. A younger waiter leaned toward Jake and whispered, "That's Snoop Dogg, man. He's a legend." Jake blinked, his face betraying a mix of shock and disbelief. Snoop Dogg? Here? In this restaurant? He didn't fit the image Jake had in his mind of a celebrity who should frequent Le Chateau Luxe. "A rapper," Jake muttered under his breath, shaking his head in disdain. Jake's prejudice began to bubble to the surface. "What's he even doing here?" he mumbled, his words barely audible but laced with irritation. A nearby hostess shot him a warning glance, her lips pursed. Jake brushed it off, telling himself that his instincts were still right. Maybe Snoop was famous, but that didn't mean he belonged in a place like this. When Jake returned to the floor, he found Snoop seated at one of the prime tables near the center of the dining room. the same table Jake had earlier refused to offer. The manager himself had escorted him there, pulling out the chair with the kind of deference reserved for the most influential clients. The energy in the room was different now. Diners who recognized Snoop whispered excitedly, their faces lighting up as they debated whether to approach him for a picture. Jake felt a sour knot tighten in his stomach. To him, this attention felt out of place in a setting that prided itself on quiet sophistication. Jake's hands trembled slightly as he carried Snoop's order back to the kitchen. His mind raced, replaying the interaction over and over. What did he mean by, "You might want to rethink how you treat people"? Was it just a passing comment or a warning? Back in the kitchen, the tension was palpable. The younger waitstaff buzzed with excitement about Snoop Dogg being there, but Jake felt like a storm was brewing just for him. He tried to keep a low profile, but the manager soon found him. "Jake," the manager said, his tone firm. "A word." Jake followed him into the small staff office, his palms sweating. The manager crossed his arms, his expression unreadable. "I've been hearing some things about how you treated Mr. Broaddus earlier. Care to explain?" Jake stammered, searching for an excuse. I didn't realize who he was. He came in dressed so casually, and I thought—" "You thought what?" the manager interrupted, his voice rising slightly. "That he wasn't worthy of being here? Jake, do you know what kind of reputation this restaurant would have without people like him? He's more than a celebrity. He's a cultural icon, and newsflash, he's the owner of this place." Jake's heart sank. The realization hit him like a ton of bricks. Owner? He'd thought Snoop was just another out-of-place guest. Now, he realized the man had far more power than anyone else in the room, including himself. The manager took a deep breath, softening his tone slightly. "Jake, this isn't just about Mr. Broaddus. It's about your attitude. You can't judge people by their appearance. It's not just wrong, it's bad for business." "I understand," Jake said quickly, though his voice wavered. "I'll make it right." The manager nodded curtly. "You'd better, because if you don't, this might be your last shift here." Jake returned to the floor, his face pale and his mind spinning. He glanced toward Snoop's table, but the man was casually chatting with another diner, seemingly unbothered. Still, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that he'd burned a bridge he might never be able to rebuild. What would Snoop do next? And was there any way Jake could undo the damage he'd caused? Jake's future at the restaurant hung by a thread, but was an apology enough to fix the situation? Or had he made an irreversible mistake? Jake approached Snoop Dogg's table slowly, balancing the plate of grilled salmon with unsteady hands. He rehearsed an apology in his mind, but every version sounded hollow. As he reached the table, Snoop looked up at him with a calm, steady gaze. "Here's your order, sir," Jake said, his voice barely above a whisper. He set the plate down carefully, avoiding eye contact. "I hope it's to your satisfaction." Snoop studied him for a moment, then gestured toward the empty chair across the table. "Why don't you sit for a second, Jake?" Jake blinked, startled. I don't think I'm allowed to." "I own the place, remember?" Snoop interrupted, his tone light but firm. "I'm saying it's cool. Take a seat." Reluctantly, Jake pulled out the chair and sat down, his posture stiff. He felt the weight of every diner's gaze, as if the whole room was waiting to see what would happen next. Snoop leaned back, taking a slow sip from his glass of wine before speaking. "You seem like a smart guy, Jake, so let me ask you something. Why'd you treat me like that earlier?" Jake swallowed hard. I didn't know who you were," he admitted. "I thought—" Snoop raised an eyebrow. "You thought what? That I didn't belong here? That I wasn't worth your time?" Jake's face flushed. "I made a mistake," he said quickly. "I shouldn't have judged you like that. It was wrong, and I'm sorry." Snoop nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. "Apology's a good start," he said. "But let me tell you something about mistakes, Jake. They don't define you. What defines you is how you fix them." Jake shifted uncomfortably in his seat, feeling like a student in a life lesson he hadn't asked for. "I'll do better," he said earnestly. "I'll make sure it doesn't happen again." Snoop chuckled, a warm sound that eased some of Jake's tension. "I believe you, man. But here's the thing. You've got an opportunity here, not just to do better for me, but for everyone who walks through those doors. You never know who someone is or what they've been through. Respect is free, and it goes a long way." Jake nodded, absorbing the words. You're right. I've been so focused on appearances, I lost sight of what really matters. Snoop leaned forward, a small smile playing on his lips. And what matters, Jake? Jake hesitated before answering, but then he looked Snoop in the eye, treating everyone with respect, no matter who they are. Now you're getting it, Snoop said, leaning back again. He gestured toward the staff bustling around the dining room. You've got a good team here. Don't let your ego mess that up. Jake stood, feeling a strange mix of shame and relief. Thank you, he said quietly, for giving me a chance to make this right. As Jake walked back to the kitchen, he felt lighter, as if a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. But the lesson Snoop had given him was heavy. It was something he'd carry with him for the rest of his life. Jake had learned a hard lesson, but would his actions prove he truly understood the value of respect? Or would he slip back into old habits when the pressure was on? As Jake returned to the kitchen, he could feel the weight of his co-workers' stares. Word had spread quickly about his earlier mistake, and the tension in the air was palpable. Some whispered among themselves, while others openly glanced at him, their expressions a mix of pity and judgment. The younger waiter, who had earlier identified Snoop Dogg, approached Jake cautiously. Hey man, he said, his voice low. That was intense. Are you okay? Jake forced a smile. Yeah, I'm fine, he lied, just trying to focus on my work. But as the evening progressed, the challenges continued to mount. Some regular patrons, having overheard snippets of the drama, now gave Jake pointed looks as he served their tables. One diner, a middle-aged man in an expensive suit, smirked as Jake refilled his wine. Quite a learning experience tonight, huh? The man said, his tone dripping with condescension. Jake clenched his jaw but managed to nod politely. Yes, sir, he replied, keeping his voice steady. Back in the kitchen, the head chef, a no-nonsense woman named Linda, cornered him during a lull. Jake, I've worked with you for years, she said, crossing her arms. You've always been good at what you do, but your attitude? It's been a problem for a while. Maybe tonight was the wake-up call you needed. Her words stung, but Jake couldn't deny their truth. He nodded silently, feeling the weight of her gaze before she turned back to her station. Meanwhile, Snoop Dogg remained in the dining room, exuding the same calm confidence as before. He interacted warmly with the staff, taking selfies with a few nervous waiters and joking with diners who approached him. To Jake's surprise, Snoop's demeanor seemed to ease the overall tension in the room, even as Jake continued to feel like he was walking on eggshells. Later in the evening, a small but unexpected ally emerged. Marissa, one of the newer waitresses, pulled Jake aside during a break. Hey, she began hesitantly, I know tonight's been rough, but I've seen how hard you've been working. People make mistakes. It's what you do after that counts. Jake looked at her, startled by her kindness. Thanks, Marissa, he said, his voice sincere. I appreciate that. The final test of the night came when Snoop requested Jake personally to bring him dessert. Jake's heart raced as he prepared the plate, a perfectly arranged chocolate soufflé with a dollop of whipped cream. Approaching Snoop's table felt like stepping onto a stage, with all eyes in the dining room watching his every move. Jake set the dessert down carefully, then stepped back. I hope it's to your liking, Mr. Broaddus, he said, his voice steady but humble. Snoop took a bite, his expression inscrutable at first. Then with a nod and a smile, he said, Perfect. You're getting the hang of this, Jake. A ripple of relief washed over Jake, though the lesson of the evening lingered. He had been tested in every way, by his colleagues, the diners, and most importantly, by himself. As the restaurant began to wind down, Jake realized that tonight wasn't just about saving his job. It was about learning a fundamental truth. Respect had to be earned, not demanded, and it started with how he treated others. Jake had taken the first steps toward redemption, but would his newfound humility stick? Or would old habits resurface when the pressure was off? As the night at Le Chateau Luxe began to wind down, the tension in the air had finally started to settle. Jake moved through the dining room with quiet efficiency, clearing tables and avoiding eye contact with both staff and diners. But no amount of work could erase the lingering weight of the evening. In the kitchen, the staff gathered for the customary post-shift meeting. The manager stood at the front, clapping his hands to draw attention. Great job tonight, everyone, he said. We had a challenging night, but the team pulled through. Jake tried to shrink into the background, but the manager's next words froze him in place. "Before we finish up, Mr. Broadus would like to have a word with all of you." The air in the room shifted as the staff exchanged glances. Jake's heart began to race as they were led back into the dining area. There, Snoop Dogg stood near the bar, his demeanor as relaxed as ever, holding a glass of red wine. The lingering diners fell silent, their eyes fixed on him as he turned to address the staff. "I just want to take a moment to say something," Snoop began, his deep voice cutting through the stillness. "Y'all run a tight ship here. The food, the service, the vibe, everything's on point. And that's because of you, each and every one of you." A ripple of pride spread through the staff, but Jake felt a knot tightening in his chest. He knew the moment of reckoning was coming. "But," Snoop continued, his tone shifting, "there's something else I want to talk about. You see, when I came in tonight, I wasn't just here for the food. I was here to see how things work when you're not dressed up, when you don't fit the usual image." His words hung in the air, heavier than any silence. Jake felt every eye in the room shift toward him, though Snoop didn't point fingers or raise his voice. "Most of y'all passed that test," Snoop said, his gaze softening slightly. "But there was a moment where it could have gone sideways, and I'm not saying this to put anyone down. I'm saying it because it's a lesson we all need to learn. Respect ain't about how someone looks, how much they're worth, or what they're wearing. Respect is about treating everybody like they matter, because they do." The staff remained quiet, absorbing the weight of Snoop's words. Jake's face burned with shame, but at the same time, a flicker of something else stirred within him, hope. Snoop turned his gaze toward Jake, his expression calm yet firm. "Jake, you had a tough night, man. But I'll say this. You made it right by the end. That's what counts." Jake swallowed hard and stepped forward, his voice shaking as he said, "Thank you, Mr. Broadus. I didn't realize how wrong I was until tonight. I won't forget this." Snoop nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. "Good. 'Cause we're all learning, Jake. Life ain't about never messing up. It's about how you bounce back. And I see potential in you, man. Don't waste it." The applause started softly, first from the diners, and then spreading to the staff. Jake looked around, surprised to see encouragement in their faces. For the first time all night, he felt a sense of relief, like he was finally stepping out from under a dark cloud. After the meeting, Jake lingered in the dining room, wiping down tables in silence. Marissa approached him, a warm smile on her face. "You handled that well," she said. Jake sighed, shaking his head. "I don't know. I feel like I've got a long way to go." She placed a hand on his arm. "We all do, but you took the first step, and that's what matters." Before leaving, Jake glanced over at Snoop one last time. The man was surrounded by a small crowd of diners, laughing and taking pictures. Yet when Snoop caught Jake's eye, he gave a quick nod, a silent message of acknowledgement and approval. As Jake walked out into the cool night air, he felt a strange mix of exhaustion and renewal. Snoop's words replayed in his mind. Respect ain't about how someone looks. It's about treating everybody like they matter. That lesson wouldn't end with the shift. For Jake, it was the beginning of a change he never saw coming. Jake had taken the first steps toward redemption, but how would he apply this lesson in his daily life? Could he truly change for good? Weeks had passed since that fateful night at Le Chateau Luxe, but the echoes of its lessons remained fresh in Jake's mind. The shift in his attitude didn't come all at once, but gradually, like the steady flow of a tide reshaping a shoreline. Each day, he reminded himself of Snoop Dogg's words. Respect is about treating everybody like they matter. Jake no longer scanned diners for signs of wealth or status when they walked in. Instead, he greeted every guest with the same genuine courtesy, whether they wore tailored suits or faded jeans. Over time, his efforts began to transform the atmosphere of the restaurant. Regular patrons, once accustomed to Jake's cool detachment, now commented on how attentive and warm he'd become. New diners often left glowing reviews about his exceptional service. Even the staff noticed the change. Jake, who had once been known for his sharp tongue and impatience, had become a mentor to the younger waiters. He offered guidance when they struggled and stepped in to help during busy shifts. Marissa, the waitress who had encouraged him on that pivotal night, often joked, "You're like a completely different person, Jake. What did Snoop do to you?" One afternoon, as Jake meticulously polished silverware before the dinner rush, the restaurant manager approached him with a rare smile. "You've surprised me, Jake," he said, leaning against the counter. "After that night, I wasn't sure how things would turn out, but I have to admit you've proven me wrong." Jake paused, setting down a fork. "That night taught me more than years of experience ever could," he admitted. "It made me realize this job isn't just about serving food. It's about making people feel welcome, no matter who they are." Not long after, Jake found himself once again face to face with Snoop Dogg. This time, it wasn't a surprise visit. The restaurant was hosting a special charity event, raising funds for a local community center, and Snoop had personally invited Jake to play a key role in organizing it. As the evening unfolded, Jake moved through the dining room with ease, ensuring every detail was perfect. The event was a roaring success, and Snoop took the stage at the end to thank the staff and diners for their generosity. Before stepping down, he turned to Jake. "Y'all know this man right here," Snoop said, gesturing toward him. "Jake had a rough start the first time we met, but he showed something a lot of people don't. He showed growth. That's what this is all about, man. Learning, growing, and lifting others up along the way." The applause that followed was overwhelming, but Jake's humility remained intact. After the event ended, Snoop pulled him aside for a private moment. "You've done good, Jake," Snoop said, shaking his hand firmly. "I knew you had it in you. Don't stop now." Jake nodded, his gratitude evident. "I'll never forget what you taught me. It didn't just change my job, it changed me." Snoop chuckled. "That's the thing about respect, man. It's contagious. Just keep spreading it, one person at a time." From that night forward, Jake became a symbol of growth and redemption at Le Chateau Luxe. His story spread among the staff and even the patrons, serving as a reminder that no one is beyond change. Months later, as Jake stood at the entrance of the restaurant, welcoming guests with a genuine smile, he caught a glimpse of his reflection in the glass door. He saw someone who had been humbled but had come out stronger. For the first time in years, Jake felt proud, not just of his work, but of the man he had become. Respect is free, but it's priceless. Those words from Snoop Dogg had sparked a transformation in Jake's life, proving that one powerful moment of humility can ripple outward, changing not just one person, but everyone around them.